Hi everybody and welcome to this NCFE webinar. My name's Dominic, I'm part of the business development team and I focus on the schools area. So I'm going to be taking you through some information on our vCerts today, and specifically we're going to be looking at vCert delivery. So the first area that we're going to have a look at is the structure of the vCerts. So as it stands, there are currently two different structures for vCerts. We're going to go through structure one first. This is based on the original vocational certificate model, and you'll be familiar with those as they're still existing at the moment in the form of qualifications like our health and fitness, engineering, food and cookery, just to give you a few examples. So this structure is based on 120 guided learning hours, and that's because that is the minimum amount of time required to meet the criteria for GCSE equivalency. So there shouldn't be anything really less than that being delivered. Learners must complete 4 units to be awarded a grade, and some of the vCerts have 4 mandatory units, others have a mix of mandatory and optional units. As an example, engineering has 4 mandatory units, interactive media has 3 mandatory units, and the learner must select 1 optional unit from a choice of 4 others. So there's a variance in the structure there which you'll need to be aware of. Each unit is graded using a structure of not yet achieved, pass, merit and distinction. Now, due to the synoptic nature of the vCerts, the knowledge, understanding and skills developed are equally important throughout each unit, and as a result of that, all units are given equal weighting. Each unit consists of assessment criteria, and learners must provide evidence against every assessment criteria to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding. All assessment criteria have grading descriptors, which provide an outline of what a pass, merit or distinction will look like for each assessment criteria. Grading. So assessors will make a judgment on whether a learner has demonstrated the required knowledge to meet each pass grading descriptor for each assessment criteria in the unit. All of the pass grading descriptors must be met for a learner to be awarded a pass. Similarly, a learner must meet all of the merit or all of the distinction grading descriptors to be awarded the appropriate grade. The qualification is not compensatory, and therefore if an assessment criteria is not met within the unit, then the learner will not achieve that unit. On completion of the qualification, the final grade is determined by an aggregation of the 4 individual unit grades. A distinction star is only awarded if a learner has achieved a distinction in each of the 4 units. If a learner has been awarded a not yet achieved for any unit, then they will be awarded an overall not yet achieved as their final grade. In this instance, what we can do is provide the learners with unit certificates for the ones they've achieved a pass grade or better on, and this is also the case for learners who aren't able to complete the whole qualification for any reason. So the second structure of vCerts are the technical awards, and these are the vCerts which are going live in September. So these are our new vCerts, the new technical awards, and these require a minimum of 40% of the content to be assessed externally. And as a result of this, they have a different delivery model to the previous suite of vCerts. They still have a structure of 4 units, but each unit has 3 learning outcomes, which are either know, do, or review. Each learning outcome has several assessment points, and these are similar to assessment criteria. All assessment points must still be evidenced by the learner, but the grading occurs at learning outcome level. This gives a little more scope for the assessor when it comes to grading the learning outcome and the overall unit. If the learner is evidencing the assessment points at a distinction level, with the exception of one that may be a merit or even a pass, the assessor can still award a distinction if they feel overall the learning outcome is at distinction level. This provides a greater opportunity to differentiate the high-performing learners. Devoting a single unit to external assessment is no longer enough. Learners will now sit an external assessment at the end of the qualification after all units have been delivered, and it will cover content from all units. The result will contribute to a minimum of 40% of the learner's overall grade. So the vCert level technical award qualifications have been developed with a level 1 and a level 2, both of which can be delivered together. The content is the same, but is pitched at different levels, and the grading descriptors are more demanding at the higher level. The external assessment papers will also cover both levels, meaning the learners on level 1 and level 2 can be entered for the same exam. This simplifies your timetabling for the school, and furthermore, the assessment will be on a specific time and date instead of any time in an assessment window. So the next area that we're going to look at is internal assessment. So for internal assessment, we have provided sample assessment briefs for every VCERT qualification. They're available as support material on the qualification page on the website. Briefs have been designed to cover all assessment criteria or points while also providing opportunities for stretch and challenge, and the idea of this is that it will enable learners to achieve merit and distinction grades. Centres can use the sample briefs as they are, or you can contextualise them to suit your own needs. Centres can create their own briefs as well, and if you do so, there is our assessment checking service as an option, and would encourage you to use that, especially if it's your first time delivering vocational qualifications and creating your own internal assessments. Learners need to complete all the tasks set in the assessment brief, and in doing so will build up a portfolio of work to demonstrate their own knowledge, understanding and skills. Work contributing to the portfolio must be completed in class time under supervision and following the delivery of the teaching and learning on which they will be assessed. All of the learning outcomes and assessment criteria need to be evidenced in the portfolio, and on completion of a unit, learners will submit their work to be assessed and graded. The assessor in most cases will be the teacher who will assess and grade the work. The Centre's internal quality assurer will then sample a number of portfolios in line with the Centre's agreed sampling plan, and following assessment and internal quality assurance, the Centre will then submit the grades to NCFE via the portal. And if you've got any queries around this area, I'd refer you to another webinar we've recently done on the setup and the processes around VCERTs. Have a look at that. It's in a lot more detail than this, and it will walk you through your assessment areas. So apart from the bits that we've just covered, you also have an external quality assurer visit, and you need to bank and possibly have grades rejected or approved. So when you upload grades to the portal, your allocated external quality assurer receives an automated email. Submission of the Unit 1 grades is usually the trigger for the first visit. You'll receive 2 free external quality assurer visits. Any additional visits after that are chargeable. Prior to the visit, the external quality assurer will select a sample of portfolios to determine if you've applied the grading descriptors correctly and if the grades are consistent with the national standards. During the visit, if your external quality assurer is satisfied with the grading decisions, they will bank the grades, and this finalises them. However, if any discrepancies are found in the grading decisions, they may choose to reject individual grades or potentially the entire submission. The external quality assurer will discuss the reasons for any rejections and will ensure that the assessor and internal quality assurer fully understand and agree with what the grade should be. So the external quality assurer will then reject the grades within 1 working day of the visit through our system, and the Centre will have 2 working days from the visit to submit the agreed grades, which the external quality assurer will then bank, and they will then complete their visit report. And again, this then finalises those grades. Following this process, the assessor is permitted to provide learners with individual feedback, which will allow them to improve their work. However, feedback should not be given in the form of actions which tells learners what to do. They must still demonstrate independent work in any second attempt they make. And learners are permitted a second attempt at all units to achieve a better grade. It's also worth noting that where learners may achieve a merit the first time and then look to try and push and gain a distinction, but potentially something goes wrong and they only achieve a pass second time round, they keep the best result. So there's never a downside to the learner having a second bite at the cherry. So the next area that we're going to look at is external assessment. So external assessments are set and marked by NCFE. This means that as a centre, you must not assess, internally quality assure, or provide any feedback to the learner about their performance in the external assessment. Now, there are 3 variations of external assessment, and each qualification may use one or a combination of the following: an invigilated assessment at a set date and time, a supervised assessment during an assessment window, or an invigilated assessment during an assessment window. So as part of the external assessment, learners must attempt all tasks in order to address all assessment criteria fully. And learners cannot achieve a minimum pass grade unless all assessment criteria are met. If a learner does attempt the external assessment, this entry cannot be withdrawn and will count as an attempt against the external assessment. If a learner does not attend the external assessment and has not accessed the paper at all, then this entry can be withdrawn and will not count as an attempt. And all learners are entitled to 2 attempts at the external assessment. As a centre, you must choose which assessment window you want your learners to be entered onto, and details of the assessment windows can be found on our website. You'll be asked to enter the learners at the time of registration, and this is a recently added feature to ensure that entries aren't missed. You'll be sent the papers for the external assessment when your learners have been entered for the chosen assessment window onto our portal. All externally assessed units must be delivered to the learners prior to the external assessment being sat. No stimulus materials used by the centre or any work completed during the teaching of the unit can be used in the external assessment. Also, supporting documents such as temples and worksheets should not be provided, and the external assessment tasks must not be altered in any way by yourselves as a centre. It's also important, and you must plan in the full amount of time specified for supervised and invigilated sessions within the assessment window. So the final area that we're going to look at is feedback. And the first area within the feedback is feedback during teaching and learning. So feedback is an important part of learning, and we encourage feedback during teaching and learning that will identify areas for learner progression, including stretch and challenge. Positive feedback always relates to the assessment criteria or points and the grade descriptors found in each unit within the qualification specification. Offering feedback on ways in which a learner could improve their work to achieve a pass, merit, distinction, or distinction star by referring to the assessment criteria or points and grade descriptors encourages learners to continuously do this themselves, and it prepares them for the external assessment. Feedback on how to improve knowledge, skills, understanding, behaviour, spelling, punctuation, grammar, and how to approach a task are all positive feedback. Feedback and guidance that gives a specific list of actions a learner needs to take in order to complete a task is not positive, and learners should be encouraged to identify how they can improve themselves. So, feedback during an internal assessment. So once the learner begins working on the internal assessment, the assessor must not provide any specific feedback on the evidence produced by the learner. Learners must demonstrate themselves that they can provide evidence for the assessment brief independently using their knowledge, skills, and the understanding gained through the teaching and learning of the unit delivery. We do understand it's important to continue giving general feedback and support during the assessment, which could include confirmation of which learning outcome, assessment criteria, or points the assessment brief is targeting, referring the learners to the learning outcomes and assessment criteria or points to keep them on track, clarification of what the assignment brief requirements are, or general feedback on timekeeping, attendance and punctuality, attitudes and behaviours. It's not appropriate, however, for teachers to coach learners in how to produce the evidence or what evidence to produce, unless the brief specifically states what that evidence should be. And it's also not appropriate to give learners a specific list of actions that they need to take in order to meet the assessment points or criteria and learning outcomes, or to achieve a particular grade. So feedback after the internal assessment. Feedback following the assessment must include feedback on improvement and progression, and it should not be coaching to achieve a specific grade. The feedback should be clear and constructive on the assessment criteria or points and or learning outcomes the learner has achieved or not achieved. The feedback should provide justification and explanation of the assessment decisions that have been made, make reference to the assessment criteria or points, and where appropriate, the grading descriptors. It's also good practice to give general feedback on timekeeping, attendance and punctuality, and attitudes and behaviours. Feedback should focus on what the learner has done well and why. It should encourage the learner to work out how to apply successful techniques and apply them in new situations. The feedback should encourage self-regulation and criticism, and also reference learning points. As an example, it might be, your answer might be better if you included the strategies that we discussed earlier. Feedback should focus on 1 or 2 key areas. It should reference the assessment criteria or points or the learning outcomes, and it should also provide justification for assessment decisions. A feedback should not provide templates or model answers. It should not give feedback on specific elements of tasks. It It should not give specific feedback on how to achieve a higher grade, and it shouldn't list negative points for correction. So that's the end of the webinar on delivery. I hope it's been useful for everybody. And as always, if you have any queries, please contact us here at NCFE and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thanks very much and bye for now.